Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RockyTopInsider.com, and I'm joined by our special guest at VR2, Brandon Martin. Tried to get Matt Ray on here as well, but timing didn't work out. We wanted to get this out kind of as soon as we could, so Brandon and I went ahead and hopped on here to kind of do an impromptu recruiting podcast because we weren't planning on doing this, Brandon, but we had news come out on Friday, I guess, late afternoon, early evening, depending on what time you want to call it here, what time frame it is, but something that it's not really, I guess it shouldn't be a surprise to Vol fans, it's not really a surprise to us, but four-star defensive back Kamar Wilcoxson announced on his Twitter account on Friday that he is not only decommitting from Tennessee, but flipping his commitment to Florida again. This is now the third time in his recruitment that he is now committed to Florida. He did it twice before. He committed to him early in his recruitment, then decommitted, committed to them again, decommitted, and then it's committed to Tennessee not too long after that. And then at that point, he's talking about definitely being signed on with Tennessee. I believe he did an interview with 247 Sports where he said nothing's going to stop me from signing with Tennessee. I believe I spoke with him. I liked interviewing him. I like him as a player. I really do. I'm not going to sit here and bash him just because he decommitted from Tennessee. Watching his film, I still like him. It's still like him as a player, what he brings to the table. This is now the third time he's committed to Florida. Brandon, before we kind of go a little bit deeper on this, I just want your initial reaction. We'll kind of do a quick initial reaction to both these things here, but wow. Like I said, it was not really a big surprise, but at the same time, I mean, when it happened is kind of a surprise, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's a weird situation. It's weird that this kid, again, he is a kid. I want to emphasize that. I don't want anybody listening to this, to go bash him or, tweet at him or anything like that. That's not what you should do. That's not what Vol fans, how they should be represented, how you should represent Vol Nation. But it is weird that he decommitted twice, committed to Tennessee, and then decided to go ahead and flip his commitment again to Florida. It's just weird to me.
The whole thing leaves me scratching my head, especially the way that Kamar had to deal with things whenever he announced his commitment to Tennessee a few months ago when basically he had it out on Twitter with a Florida coach. Yep. Mm-hmm. Who had gotten all over him, and they really got into it. Pretty heated exchange. Seemed like a lot of folks were upset. Seems like some other players and other recruits got involved and were upset. And it's really surprising to see Kamar go back into Florida after having committed twice, decommitted twice, came to Tennessee, now decommitted there, and now back at Florida. So this is his fourth commitment in, I think, a calendar year.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I'm not saying that to make fun of the kid or to drag Kamar. I don't want it to sound like that, but I mean, I think this is his fourth commitment in a calendar year. He has said several times Florida was his dream school. I don't think Florida ever really stopped talking to him. Clearly, he didn't stop listening. But it's just strange to me why you would leave a school, why you'd leave your commitment, two times already and then go back, especially the way things went the last time when he left. So, and I'll also say that I think Kamar's path to the field was a lot shorter at Tennessee than it will be in Gainesville. Florida has kind of stockpiled defensive backs. They signed six or seven last class. 6 or 7 good defensive backs last class. Enter in on a few more this year. And I'm not saying Kamar's not good, but I think Kamar's path to the field is going to be more difficult than it would have been at Tennessee. I think he had the opportunity to be a little more versatile for Tennessee and to get on the field a little more quickly. He's going to have to wait his turn at Florida, and he's going to have to fight it out with a lot of defensive backs. And I know he has said he's shutting it down after this, but we've heard that a few times before at this point. Now, I don't know that Tennessee's going to keep going after him. I think at some point you're going to see the Tennessee staff doesn't usually back off guys, but at some point you got to wonder if you're wasting your time and your effort.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And with this, like you said, with this situation, you and I were talking about this before we hit record. I mean, yes, he says he's shutting down his commitment, that he's done for good, that he's not going to be entertaining any phone calls from any other coaches. He thanked all the other coaches who've recruited him and stuff, but he says he's not going to, answer calls from the other schools or whatever. You can say that, and because it's just his word. Like we said, I'm not trying to bash him. He's a 17-year-old kid, and everybody makes mistakes.
And a good kid.
And a good kid. He genuinely is a good kid. I mean, I've interviewed him. Y'all have interviewed him. Like I said, I like him. But at this point, it's hard to believe your word when this is the fourth time you've committed to a school, like you said, in a calendar year. It's just you can say one thing, and he has said one thing multiple times and gone back on it. So I don't know. Like you said, though, even if he does entertain calls at this point, does Tennessee still even try? I don't know. I think there are a couple of different things I want to talk about in this podcast, and I think right now would be a good way to kind of transition into, speaking of, does Tennessee want to keep trying? Because Tennessee has still a lot of defensive backs on their board in this 2021 cycle right now that they're looking at, that they've offered, that are that Tennessee's legitimate contenders for. Because I was when I wrote the article about him decommitting, I just listed off the top of my head just 3 that came right in my mind immediately, and I thought, man, there's even more than that Tennessee, and the Tennessee still has 4 guys, 3 that are for sure projected in the secondary, and then a 4th in Cayman Marley, who can play the secondary if they want him to. But you have Jay Jones, you have Edwin White, and Deshaun Rucker, who are all definite secondary guys at Tennessee, and Elijah Howard, who he is being recruited now as an offensive player. He told me that himself last week, but he has the capability of playing corner if they wanted to move him there, move him to the secondary. But you look at some of the guys that they're targeting, and just right off the top of my head, guys like Isaiah Johnston and Nyland Green come to my mind. I don't think Nathaniel Wiggins will come to Tennessee, but Tennessee is still pursuing him as an option. You have Dejon Warren, who is a JUCO cornerback, the number 1 JUCO cornerback in the country right now. Demarius McGee, who's a 4-star out of Florida, who just recently included Tennessee in his list of top schools. And that's just at cornerback. You also have at safety, Tennessee still pursuing a few other guys like Terrion Arnold, who Tennessee is very high on. I think Tennessee still has a little bit of work to do there, but that's definitely a guy Tennessee has targeted hardcore. You have Dink Jackson, who is a 4-star, again, out of Florida, who Tennessee has really been pushing forward and targeting. And then you have a kid out of Crisp County who I actually did an interview with and should have some stuff from that interview this weekend on RockyTopInsider.com, of Sherrod Bryant, who's a safety down at Crisp County, which is where Tennessee assistant coach Shelton Felton was once the head coach. And that doesn't include different athletes and stuff. That's just looking at the recruiting rankings and these guys who are listed as safeties and corner. And there are a couple other athletes out there who can play in the secondary too. I mean, Brandon, there are a ton of fish on the line still at Tennessee in the secondary. So that's why it's just the whole situation with Kamar is weird. But if I'm a Vol fan, we'll address one thing that Vol fans might be worried about here in a second. But if you're looking at where does Tennessee go in the secondary from here, I wouldn't be that worried about it, honestly. If there's one area for sure I trust the staff to recruit and evaluate talent, it's in the secondary. With the way Pruitt and Ainsley have proven in the past, they can coach secondary players and identify talent there. I trust those 2 guys to go out and find some high quality defensive backs.
Absolutely, and I don't like doing this thing of whenever you have a guy and it's like, you talk him up when he commits, he decides to leave and go somewhere else, and then you have the crowd of, oh, well, we didn't want him anyway, or it's not going to be a big loss. Now, look, Kamar Wilcoxson's an outstanding player. He's a very good football player, and I think this staff wanted him. I believe he could have made a real impact at Tennessee. I think he's a very high IQ safety on the field. We talked about that. He has looked at corner. He's looked at safety. I like him better at safety. I've felt that way from the beginning. I think that's where he can shine. I think that's where that high football IQ comes in. I think that's his best fit. I think Florida might like him a little better at corner, I know Tennessee had talked about it, but I think he translates better as a safety. And with that in mind, I don't want to say he's not a loss, but I do also. We had talked about before that in this numbers game, Tennessee's probably only going to take 2 safeties. You have recruited safety well the last few years. You've got several versatile guys in your defensive backfield already that can help you back there. You've got guys like Kaidon Salter who came in, Tamarion McDonald that came in this class. You have guys like Jalen McCullough who are still on the roster. You have Tyus Fields who's played that nickel and who has played safety some. Trayvon Flowers is still on the roster. I mean, you've got and more besides, but you've got several high quality safeties in this class on this team already. You added a couple of good ones last class, and you're adding right now Edwin White, who this staff is high on, who we felt might be the last guy kind of trying to get in this class. If Tennessee was able to hold on to guys and things went the way they wanted to with numbers. But they like White. I think he's got a lot of upside. And I think Kaman Marley's going to wind up at safety now. I like Kaman Marley as a wide receiver because he reminds me so much of Cordero Patterson. That's just me. But he is absolutely an impact safety, impact wide receiver, impact running back, whatever you want him to be. If you put him at safety, I think this staff really likes him there. His tape is really good there. So, I mean, there may be your other safety in this class. Tennessee's also got several athletes that they have been in a lot of talks with. One guy that leaps to my mind right now is Trey Curry. We talked about in the last podcast that had committed to Tennessee. Didn't seem like the coaches were ready to take his commitment. Is he an offensive player? Is he a defensive back? Who knows? But there's another guy that you're in a good spot with. What Tennessee really needs this class, and we've talked about this too, is they need corners. They need corners worse than they need safeties. They need to sign at least 3 corners in this class. And I mean 3 real, pure, honest to good, put them on an island corners. Demarius McGee is a guy who can be that. And Tennessee seems to be in a really good spot right there. Isaiah Johnson is another guy. He can be that. He can be that on an island corner. I think Tennessee's got a real shot there. Tennessee's trying to claw back in it with Nyland Green. They are working to get back in that one. DeJuan Warren, number 1 JUCO corner in the nation. I think the number 1 JUCO player in the nation.
It's either him or Tyon. Yeah, one of those two.
Yeah, it's he or Tyon, and DeJuan is a guy that very interested in Tennessee, has already scheduled an official visit. The Vols are going to get his next to last visit. So I mean, he's a target. He's a priority. He's a guy that Tennessee could make a move with and use. We talked about Warren, a few of these other guys. One other guy that's kind of emerging for Tennessee right now is Terrion Arnold, and you mentioned him. Terrion Arnold's recruitment just took an interesting turn, though, when he wasn't just given an offer by Tennessee football, but he was given an offer by Tennessee basketball this past week as well. So you may see something similar to what you saw with Malachi Weidman or D. Beckwith in a player that both Tennessee programs are recruiting. So I don't want to make it sound like Kamar Wilcoxson is not a loss in this class. He is. He's a very good player. You lose a player like that, and it hurts. But I think, especially to a division rival, but I think Tennessee is looking more for corners than they are for safeties. And I know that Kamar has said he wants to play both. I understand that. But you look at him on film, and Kamar's a much better safety than he is a corner. That's just his junior film, what we have at this time. He translates much better as a safety than he does as a corner. And I think that's a position Tennessee can mitigate a loss at. I think they can take losing a guy like Kamar better with him being a safety than with him being a corner. Tennessee's got guys they can look at. I think they're only going to take 2 safeties anyway, And if you really liked Kaman Marley there, and if you like Edwin White and are confident in him, they're your two safeties as it is. I don't think Tennessee's done. They may try to recruit another safety and maybe recruit over someone or give themselves an option to let Marley go wherever he wants to again. But I think they've at least got the two safeties they really would like to have in this class. But corner is where the need's at.
Quickly here, of the guys we've mentioned, looking at Nyland Green, looking at Terron Arnold, looking at some of the ones we mentioned here of Dink Jackson and those guys, who do you think Tennessee has the best shot at landing? Because I like we said, there's a good twist there of Tennessee basketball offering Arnold. I still think the Vols have some room to kind of make up there with him, but I do think they're sitting pretty well with him. But in your opinion, Brandon, who of the Demarius McGee's that we mentioned too, who of all of the and Warren, who of all these guys that we've mentioned, do you think Tennessee has the best shot of adding to this class?
I think it's probably Demarius McGee and Isaiah Johnson. Tennessee's in a really good spot with McGee. They're in his top 5. I know Tennessee has liked him. Niedermeyer has been involved in that recruitment, and anytime you have Moose on a guy, if you're a Tennessee fan, you've got to like your chances.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been down to Miami to see him. I think that's one that you can circle as an interesting one for Tennessee. I think they like him a lot. They like what he brings to the table. His film's really good. He's a press man corner that is just what Pruitt likes. The other guy I think Tennessee has a good shot with is Isaiah Johnson. Tennessee has really pushed hard there. They like him a lot, and they've been involved there for a minute. I think they feel like they can win that one, or they can at least be in it until the end. Johnson's a kid's probably going to take a while before he announces, but I think Tennessee's in a good spot right there, and I think they're in a pretty good spot with Warren as well. But Warren's not going to make a decision. He's been real upfront with saying he's going to take his visits. He's got his visits scheduled through December already, mm-hmm. and he's going to make a decision on the signing day for the early signing period. So you're not going to hear anything out of Warren for a while. He seems like he's really got a schedule, got everything in place, made his mind up on that. But I do think Tennessee's in a good spot there. So those are the three, probably in that order, that I think Tennessee's in shape with, and I think they'd like to take at least 2 of those guys if they could.
Man, I would love to see them get McGee or Johnson. I really like Terron Arnold too, but man, McGee or Johnson, either one would be big gets. I know Johnson he missed the majority of his junior season after suffering an injury. That's one reason why you kind of see him slip down a little bit in the recruiting rankings. He's still a top 150 overall player on 247 Sports, but at one point he was a 5-star. I think if he goes out and shows that he's recovered from his injury, he plays over at West Virginia. I think if he goes out and shows that his injury isn't hampering him anymore, I think he'll be fine. I think he could even re-earn that 5-star ranking. But McGee's a guy who's steadily been climbing up the rankings and has just gotten offer after offer after offer. Excuse me. This year, he just recently picked up an offer from Alabama. I think a couple days after he named his top 5. He's got picked up offers from Georgia, Miami, and other teams this year alone over the last 3 or 4 months. So he's a kid that is blowing up, and these are all bigger body kids. McGee's at around 6'1", 162. He's going to have to put on some weight, but he's got a good frame. And then Johnson's 6'2", 180. And I believe Terron Arnold is also 6'1", 6'2". Let me pull up his profile here. Yeah, he's 6'2", 187. So these are all big kids. Kamar Wilcoxson was a pretty big kid too. So I think Tennessee will be fine. Like you said, it may just take a little bit. Like you said, I don't think any of these guys are maybe potentially close to announcing anytime soon, especially Warren. He's, like you said, he's going to be taking all his visits. He's not visiting Tennessee until December, and then he's visiting, I think, Georgia after that. So it might be a little bit before you see, I guess, Wilcoxson's replacement in this class, or a guy who's going to take his spot.
I'd look for McGee to announce first of those guys.
I was going to say I think McGee's closer. He got a top 5. Johnson had a top 8, so it looks like McGee got unless Bama sneaks in there and he puts he kind of replaces another team with Bama, or they make more of a noise. I think McGee's closer, but then again, I still don't know that he's going to that he's preparing to do anything anytime soon. So we'll see about all that. There's still plenty of good news about Tennessee recruiting. In fact, we'll end the podcast here in a little bit with one piece of good news. But we do want to talk about one other thing I know that Vol fans probably have concern about and that I'd seen people talking about, and that is, with Wilcoxson, right? And he was I can't remember if I mentioned this before earlier in the podcast now, but he was the second guy that committed to Tennessee that really got things going for Tennessee. He was the guy who committed the day after Dylan Brooks. Dylan Brooks kind of got the hot streak started. The 5-star defensive end committed that Sunday in late April. Yeah, like April 25th or 26th, I believe. And the very next day is when Kamar committed to Tennessee. That's those two commitments kind of got the ball rolling. You saw, later on Terrence Lewis committing. You saw other 4 and 5 4 stars and highly rated guys committing to Tennessee, and they picked up, I think it was like 16 commits in like a 4-week span or something like that, maybe even a shorter span. So there's been talking, and early on in his commitment to Tennessee, like the first month or so, Wilcoxson was very vocal on Twitter and trying to be a vocal recruiter to Tennessee. I remember I asked him about that when I interviewed him, and he talked about, yes, I wanted to build an epic class at Tennessee was his exact wording. We talked about why he chose Tennessee, talked about really liking the track records of Jeremy Pruitt and Derek Ansley and the cornerbacks and defensive backs they've coached and stuff. But there's been a concern, I would say, from Vol fans. Does this kind of start a domino effect? Do we see now, because he decommitted, some of these other guys who kind of hopped in the boat, who joined Tennessee's class after him, and the fact that he was such a strong peer recruiter early on, will we see other guys, jump out? And early returns on Twitter right now, Brandon, I'm going to have to side with, I don't think so. I've already seen a number of Vol commits tweet out their reaffirmations of their commitments to Tennessee. Julian Nixon, 4-star receiver, quoted Kamar's commitment to Florida and said, "At the end of the day, we're still bros," and had a crying face emoji and a black heart. And then he also tweeted out, "Life goes on." We saw Dylan Brooks get asked by, I guess a Bama fan, saying, "When you coming home?" #Bama. He quoted and said, "Never." And then that's got obviously a lot of traction on Twitter. Jalen Wright, Tennessee, one of Tennessee's running back commitments. He tweeted out "all in" reference to being all in with Tennessee's class. And you look at a couple other guys as well who've taken to Twitter since Kamar Wilcoxson announced his decommitment. You had Colby Smith, offensive tackle, tweeted out a picture of himself in UT gear saying, "This wasn't for the hype. I just want to let y'all know this kid ain't going nowhere." #GBO, #trench game. And then Kitron Evans, the 4-star defensive tackle from up in Baltimore, tweeted out a picture of himself again in Vol gear with an edit. I guess maybe from Tennessee. I don't know. It's an edit from something for him standing in Neyland. He says, "I'm a Vol. That ain't changing." #GBO. So it seems like for the most part, especially a lot of Tennessee's higher rated guys in this class, I don't think that we're going to see a huge ripple effect from Kamar Wilcoxson decommitting. I don't think you're going to see a lot of dominoes falling and other kids announcing their decommits from Tennessee. It seems like, from everything we're seeing, or at least on social media, a lot of the Vol commits are pretty solid this class still.
I was worried about this as well when we sort of heard rumblings that Kamar might be looking to decommit and go back to Florida. That was my first concern, because with, like I said earlier, with the position that Kamar plays, as good as he is and as quality a player as he is, and a good kid and a good peer recruiter, if you lost him, he was a guy that I felt like you could replace in this class, both as a peer recruiter, both as a safety on the field. I feel like Tennessee had the ability to weather that loss without really missing too much of a beat, and they have a chance to replace it and grow on. What I worried about was if you start losing other guys that he helped recruit, then you got a problem. And it's like you said, we've seen a lot of guys on Twitter that have come out and said, "I'm in, I'm not going anywhere." Seems like there's been a fair amount of people in this Tennessee class that are more than a little irritated with Kamar, actually.
Yeah.
and one of the guys that has been giving him a lot of back and forth is Terrence Lewis. And that Terrence Lewis is the guy that, and I've said this from the beginning, I think Terrence Lewis, of all the guys that Tennessee had in this class, I think he's the guy they're going to have to work the hardest to keep. That they want to keep. I felt like if anybody was going to flip, I would have said Lewis. I think Tennessee is going to still have to work to keep him. But boy, right now, that was the guy I was worried about when we started hearing all this from Kamar, and it seems like he's giving Kamar probably the hardest time of anybody, and seems like he's solid in what he's saying. Seems like this team is solid in what he's saying, and I'm not talking about fans getting on and ripping Kamar. And I'll be honest, most of what I've seen, now I've not been on for a little while, and I know how Twitter gets, but most of what I have seen from Tennessee fans has been, "Hey, best of luck to you." I've not seen too many Tennessee fans trashing Kamar. I think they saw how upset he was when that happened, when he decommitted from Florida last time. I'm sure it's happening some. I've not seen a lot of it. If I go back now, that may be different. I don't think the other guys in this class are necessarily bashing Kamar, but I do think they're giving him a bit of a hard time for it. And you wondered, did you earn that a little bit?
Yeah, you and I were talking before we hit record here. It feels a little bit, it's still a little early. It's still June. Things could change between now and then, but it feels like he's kind of put himself a little bit in that Quay Walker, Jacob Copeland territory for Tennessee. And I would say this time last year, I would have added Cade Mace to that list. Obviously, that's changed because Cade Mace is now at Tennessee, but it feels like he's put himself squarely into villain territory for Vol fans.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's necessarily fair for Kamar.
No, I agree.
These kids, you got to do what you think is best for you. You've got to make those decisions. But at the same time, there's a way to do it. Originally Kamar had talked about, "Hey, on July 4th, Tennessee, I've got something coming for you," and then moved it up to today. And this is probably not the fan base you want to troll. Man, if you want to go somewhere else, then hey, by all means go somewhere else. But if you're wanting to flip to a team in the division like Florida, Dream School or not, this probably isn't the fan base to taunt, because they don't forget. They don't forget, and they really don't forgive too much. And I don't want to see that for Kamar. I don't, because I do. I think he's a good kid. But you go from saying some of what you did as a peer recruiter, saying some of what you did when you came to Tennessee, and then saying kind of what you've said on the way out the door and going to Florida now. It doesn't sit right with folks. It makes a lot of stuff seem disingenuous, and I think that's a little bit where you're seeing some of the other commitments and some of the other players being hard on him right now come from. Did you really mean what you were saying? Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not trying to bash Kamar. I'm not doing that at all. But when you've had 4 commitments in a calendar year, that's kind of a fair question to ask.
Yeah, I hadn't looked at Terrence Lewis's Twitter until you mentioned it, and you weren't kidding about him being the one giving him the hardest time. He quoted that graphic that Kamar put out twice with different GIF reactions. One of them was Kevin Hart saying, "Wait, what?" The other one, and another one was let me pull it back up here. It was the GIF of the guy doing trying to figure out the math equation, have all these math equations kind of appearing around his head, trying to figure out the math. The math ain't mathin' is what what I've heard people say before. You also got Julian Nixon again tweeting out another graphic with him saying he's committed to Tennessee. So Julian Nixon, like not even doubling down, like tripling down on his commitment to Tennessee. And interesting also, Brandon, to kind of turn this over to some more kind of good news and transitioning subjects here. You have Cody Brown, who has been committed to Tennessee. I think I remember when exactly committed to Tennessee, but he's a 4-star running back. You and I both talked about how we're big fans of him. I think he's going to be an excellent SEC running back. he tweeted out a graphic that said, has a picture of him in UT gear and a picture of Amarius Mims in UT gear, and said, it's the move. And he added Amarius Mims and said, Vol Nation, y'all show my boy some love. And then Mims tweeted back at him and said, what we talked about, with a fist emoji, saying like a fist up emoji or whatever. So also kind of interesting to watch there is, Tennessee pursuing Amarius Mims. We've talked about him multiple times on this podcast, Brandon. We've talked about, Smail London, two big-time targets for both Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama, especially with the Mims. But so some more maybe good news there. It looks like, Cody Brown hadn't mentioned about himself being still committed, but that I think it tells you all you need to know there, that he's kind of voicing off on how he thinks about everything going on. But to kind of build off that to some more good news and stuff, we'd also had the news on Friday. I mean, Friday's been a busy day, Brandon, and we're recording this, and it feels like there's been like 5 or 6 pieces of news that came out today. You had T. Martin discussing, kind of going into detail where the money is going to go if Tennessee does wear the black jerseys in honor of Black Lives Matter against Kentucky. It's not going to go to the actual organization. It's going to stay in the state of Tennessee, and specifically probably in East Tennessee and Knoxville, which I do think is a good move. You had the fact that a unnamed basketball player has tested positive for COVID. Like I said, not named because of medical issues and then privacy and things like that. But you had that. But one piece of good news you did have for today was that Kaidon Salter, Tennessee's 4-star quarterback commit who keeps just moving up recruiting rankings, he has been invited. He's one of the 20 quarterbacks to be invited to the Elite 11 finals. And Brandon, this makes the 3rd straight year and the 4th time since 2015 that Tennessee's had a quarterback commit at the Elite 11. I mean, that's pretty impressive. You had 2 years ago, you had Brian Maurer, who actually ended up, I think, being named like the most improved guy there or something like that. Then last year you had Harrison Bailey, who, obviously he had a pretty good time there as well. And then in 2015 you had Garantano. So that's 4 Tennessee quarterback commits who have been invited and participated in the Elite 11 camp. And I think Salter, his stock, it just keeps on rising.
So Salter could fool around and win this thing. I know that the Elite 11 is a bit political.
Yeah.
But if we're talking strictly on performance, Kaidon Salter could fool around and win this competition. The more of his film that I watch, the more impressed I am. He's got and I don't normally like comparing guys to pro players and current pro players because it's such a jump from high school to that level. Mm-hmm. But every now and then you just see a guy and he just reminds you of someone else. And I don't have a good Tennessee comparison for Kaidon Salter, so I've got to kind of go to the pros right now. He's got a little bit of that Patrick Mahomes arm to him, that scramble around, buy time, and then if you're on the field, you're in range. I mean, he can throw. He may have the biggest arm of anybody at this camp. It's going to be really interesting to watch him perform at the Elite 11 because he's got one of the strongest and biggest arms of anybody in the country. He can get the ball anywhere on the field, multiple launch platforms. You can move the pocket. He can still unload it. That's what makes him so dangerous when he scrambles, kind of like Mahomes, is when he gets out of the pocket, if anybody makes a mistake anywhere on the field, he can exploit it for a huge gain. And Salter's got that kind of arm. He doesn't quite have the accuracy yet that a guy like Mahomes has got, but Mahomes is a Super Bowl champion, and Kaidon Salter's going into his senior year of high school. So there's some development that still has to go on there. Mm-hmm. But you can see the flashes of I see the similarities on film. It's going to be really fun to watch that. And as of right now, we're hoping to be able to be there live and to be covering that event. It is going to be here in Nashville. For those that don't know, if I've not made this clear, I live in Nashville now, so it's going to be here. It's looking like we're going to be able to cover this thing live. Excited for that. And I think you're going to get a chance to see some other Tennessee guys work there. Because you got to have guys for these quarterbacks to throw to, and they want DBs involved, tight ends involved. So I think you're going to see a lot of local guys come in here. So we're hoping to maybe see some more Tennessee commits and targets come into this and work with these elite quarterbacks. But Uh, this is a big deal for Kaidon Salter. This is a big stage. This is a really big stage to be on, to be in this Elite 11. They don't invite just anybody to this. This is a big deal camp. This is a big time award. A lot of the guys that compete in this go on to be very, very successful in college. A good portion of them wind up going on and having pretty promising pro careers. So this is a big deal. This is a big invite, and Salter's not just going to be a guy who's here or looking to surprise someone. Salter's a guy who's going to be coming here and could potentially win these events. And really open some eyes, because his stock has soared, and rightfully so. The more of his film I watch, the more impressed I am. I really like what Kaidon Salter brings to the table.
I saw, and I wish I could remember who the writer was, but it was a 247 Sports writer who made this comparison not too long after Salter committed to Tennessee. It was talking about that, even back then when he was kind of moving up the rankings, he posited, could Kaidon Salter be this year or this cycle's C.J. Stroud? And I thought that was interesting, because you look at C.J. Stroud, he was a guy who's ranked in the, I think, 600s. I think the lowest he was rated at one point in late February of 2019. He was 860 overall in the 247 Sports composite. And then he made a jump up to 5'11", and then he made a jump up to the top 250 in the summer, or that July. And then he ended up finishing in the composite at number 41 overall. And then by the 247 Sports rankings, he was number 29 overall, and I believe a 5-star or right outside of 5-star range. He jumped up again. Like he was a top 100 kid in December, and then by the time 247 Sports did their last recruiting update at the end of January before National Signing Day, he jumped up to a 5-star range. You look at what Kaidon Salter's done already, and it's kind of, he's on a similar trajectory as far as where he's moving in the rankings. It doesn't mean that he's going to be as good as Stroud. Obviously, Stroud hasn't really played yet either. He just signed on with Ohio State as a 2020 guy, so he hasn't had a chance to really come into his own yet. He just enrolled back in January. But Kaidon Salter was a kid who was in the 600s back in late 2019. He was 645 overall in the composite. A couple days before Christmas. He moved up to the 400 range in mid-February. Then he moved up inside the top 250 by late February. And then here, lately, back in June, or I guess just a couple days ago when they did the latest update, he moved up to 206 overall in the composite, and he got his 4th star on Rivals recently. In the 247 Sports rankings, he went from being in the 600s consistently. I mean, he was in the 600s for months. And then in mid-February, he jumped up from 650 overall to 275th, and then he went into the top 100 by the end of February, and now he's number 62 overall in 247 Sports. Obviously, rankings aren't everything, and especially with this recruiting cycle, we've talked about this before, Brandon. With this recruiting cycle specifically, rankings are going to be a little difficult, maybe a little harder to kind of buy into because of the lack of camps and stuff. But we will be getting Elite 11 camp, and it'll be different, I think, than previous Elite 11 camps because of all the COVID stuff. But we are going to get something here. There's been a couple of virtual camps and stuff that have happened too, so we're still getting a look at some of these guys, but you won't have camps on campus that coaches can get firsthand looks at guys as much as they would in a normal year. But like I was saying, I don't think this doesn't mean Salters is going to be the next CJ Stroud, but it's interesting. He's getting kind of that meteoric rise that CJ Stroud saw in the 2020 class, and the fact that he was in the 600s, 700s, or whatever, and then he jumped up to being a top 100, top 50 player. Salter's knocking around that door already, and he hasn't even had a chance to go play his senior season at Cedar Hill yet either.
Well, and you're talking about the rise that he's had. You've seen what he's done. He's one of those guys that I understand the rise even without the camps, because, and we talked about this before, you shouldn't be seeing your really, really elite guys that you've been evaluating closely. You've seen all their film. You've seen it for years. You shouldn't be seeing those guys drop during this. What you should be seeing, not drop drastically,
right.
What you should be seeing happen is these guys who have been in that 400 to 800 range, now that you're getting to sit down and watch more film, you should be looking at some of these guys and go, man, this dude's a lot better than I thought he was. or his junior film, now that I'm really getting to sit down and watch all of it, is a lot better than the one game we had based it off before. I think Salter's one of those guys. He's had that sharp rise because his junior film is excellent. It's going to be interesting to see what he does given the opportunity and the platform that he's got at this Elite 11 camp, because if you want to keep that meteoric rise up and you want to keep opening eyes and you want to keep climbing, come to Nashville and show out. Come to Nashville and win this thing. Come to Nashville and end up in the top 2 or 3 in the camp. Really put on a show what you can do, and then you do have the camp to back up what you've seen on game film going into your senior year. And that's only going to help your case to continue to move up. I think it's a big opportunity for Salter. I believe this staff and I'm personally in this too. I'd rather watch game film. I'd rather see how you play on Friday nights and see how you play against competition. But this is still a big opportunity. This is a big platform. You come show you can play, show you belong in this group of quarterbacks, and that you can do special things here, and that rise is going to continue. This is a big opportunity for Kaidon Salter.
It absolutely is. And as in the podcast here, another note on Kaidon Salter, he just tweeted out, as like just in this last minute, he just tweeted out a graphic with him. It's kind of a split screen, him wearing UT uniform, then him wearing a business suit with a UT lapel. And it says, Kaidon Salter suit up, and he tweeted out saying, 1,000% locked in, don't have to worry about me. So, again, another Tennessee commit who has come out and said, yeah, I'm sticking to the boat, guys, don't worry about it. So, this is it's been interesting seeing the recruits' reaction to all of this.
The Elite 11 is going to be interesting here in Nashville specifically as well, not just for a guy like Salter, but, we talked a little bit about, they're going to have guys to throw to, and DBs to cover those receivers and work some receivers and tight ends in there, which means you're going to be asking a lot of these local kids to come in. This is going to be a chance to, get eyes on some other Tennessee recruits or commits that may not have gotten a real camp. And they may not be the focus of the Elite 11, but I promise you they're going to be coaches there, and they're going to be coaches paying attention to the film of these guys. Just a couple names that I would suspect will be there. I don't know this for sure, so I can't speak to this, but I would expect to see a guy like a Walker Merrill at this. I'd be very surprised if he's not one of the receivers in this camp.
Yep, that's like right in his backyard. So yeah.
Yeah, it's right here. Kendrick Breedlove that committed to Ole Miss, who plays both ways at Pearl-Cohn here in Nashville. Tennessee's still involved in. That's another corner that I think Tennessee might not be done with just yet. That's a guy that I would expect to see here. There are going to be some guys that Tennessee fans are interested in that are going to get a chance to come out here and shine a little bit too. So it's going to be fun to watch those guys as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's nice to kind of get some actual real football stuff to talk about here too, and we'll have plenty more coverage moving forward. Of July could be an interesting month for Tennessee. It looks like a couple of Tennessee targets might be announcing that month, so I don't know that we'll see anything between now and the end of June, but maybe July we might have some more stuff to talk about as far as Tennessee commitments and stuff. We'll see, but we'll keep you updated on that. Brandon, before we go, is there anything on VR2 that you would like to plug for our listeners to go check out?
Yeah, we're just trying to stay on top of everything that's coming out, everything from Tim Jordan being released from the team. We've tried to follow the story with the black jerseys and where the money's going to go for that. We've had two pieces on that, and the way that Tennessee has handled a really challenging issue for our country, and they've done it in-house probably better than anybody I've heard of right now. Mm-hmm. And it's been really, really interesting to see that, and see that it's just based on a culture of respect, trust, and honesty. And that's a really refreshing thing to see, and exciting and hopeful to see these young men and coaches handling this real well. Of course, Kamar Wilcoxson, we've been on top of that. So anybody coming into the boat, anybody leaving the boat, we're going to let you know as soon as we find out. You can keep an eye on everything we have going at si.com/college/Tennessee. You can find us on Twitter at _VR2_. You can search us on Instagram and Facebook for VR2 if you would like to follow me or find me. I am Brandon. I'm Brandon at VR2. Pardon me. I'm Brandon at Brandon _VR2. Yep. Lose your own handle, man. It's been a long week, guys. But I'm Brandon _VR2 on Twitter. You can follow me. We're going to try to be involved in as we see these camps starting to come back up, because we're starting to see camps come back online. We're starting to get dates for these going out. So we're going to be on the road. We're going to be taking a look at players again, taking a look at recruits again. We're really hoping to be involved in and at the Elite 11 camp. That's going to be a big one in a couple weeks, right here in my backyard. That's really exciting. So we will be giving you as much video content, film content, interviews, articles, everything we can get our hands on and get ready for you to keep you as up to date on what's going on in Tennessee athletics as we possibly can.
Again, be sure to check them out. VR2, they're part of the Sports Illustrated family. You can find them at all the social media that Brandon listed off there at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and of course, part of the Sports Illustrated family on the website there as well. We are RockyTopInsider.com. You can find us at Rocky Top Insider on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and of course YouTube. That's the way a lot of you listen to this podcast and kind of interact with it there. So we do appreciate you guys doing that as well. And please, I probably should have said this kind of early on in the podcast because I don't know how many people are still listening at this point, but please don't leave a bunch of, mean comments and stuff about Kamar on this video. I might have to go through and delete some. I don't expect there to be a whole lot. A lot of you fans, a lot of our listeners and stuff are, genuinely good people. So I don't expect it, but I do think there'll probably be a couple trolls who come in and say something. So just try to be civil. Just treat others like you'd like to be treated. So just be aware of that. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications if you haven't yet. I do appreciate you all listening and appreciate you all giving feedback and stuff like you do. Signing off for Brandon, I am Nathaniel, and this has been another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast.